Want to see how I turn this table into this? Keep watching and I'll show you how. I bought this table at a garage sale for just $10. After spraying it down and giving it a good cleaning with Dixie Belle's White Lightning, I then started sanding it. Thankfully, it's summertime, so I can do that in my garage. This table had a pretty dark stain, so it took a lot of effort to get the stain off. And I gotta be honest, I really don't like sanding. It takes a lot of effort and it just takes forever to do. But it's very important, especially if you're wanting the wood grain to show through. My next step is to fill any cracks, which I do using Dixie Belle mud. I love this stuff. I use it all the time. Think of it as your wood putty. You can put this in any of the holes or cracks or crevices that you need to fill to ensure an even finish. So I like to leave it there overnight because that will ensure that it really hardens well. And then the next day I go back and I sand back those areas, and you can see sometimes you might need to reapply it. Next in our cast of characters is Dixie Belle's Voodoo Gel Stain All Natural. This is going to go on the top. As you can see, I've sanded back the top to its original wood grain because I want that original wood grain to show through. This Voodoo Gel Stain is a water-based stain, so think of this like a paint wash. The goal is you're going to be able to see through it and that original wood grain is going to show through. There are a lot of different ways that you can apply this. I have a small sponge that I'm using, and I've tried a couple different ways of doing this. So one way I have tried is to just squirt a line of it right on the table, and that worked okay, but there have been times when you can see that original line, so I wouldn't recommend that. What I have done is I will squirt a little bit right on my sponge and then just apply it to the surface. I definitely just dropped my sponge. Way to go. For the legs, I'll be using Cactus from the Silk Mineral line, and then for the stencil, I'll be using one of the chalk paints, Spanish Moss. You may be wondering why I didn't sand the legs. One of the things I really like about the Silk Mineral line that Dixie Belle has is that it has a built-in top coat and primer. So you don't need to actually sand the wood back unless you want to. You do want to give it a rough sand because you want to open up those pores in the wood so the paint has something to adhere to. Now normally I would recommend sanding back in between your coats of paint, but this is another benefit to that Silk Mineral line. It's self-leveling. So you can, look at it to see if you need to, but for the most part, I don't have to do that. I'll still do a couple coats of this, and in this case I did 2 coats. And now we move on to the stencil. I'm using the Wildflower Silkscreen stencil from Dixie Belle. This has an adhesive back to it, so you just lay it on where you want the stencil to go and make sure that you get it laid down really well. If you don't do that, your design is not going to look like what you hope it will. But the neat thing about these silkscreen stencils is that you'll have a raised edge when you lift it up. You want to use some sort of straight edge when you go to apply it on top. I'm using a tool that is literally called a thingamajig. And this is a purple piece of plastic that has a couple different straight edges on it. And what I do is I dip it in my paint and I put it right on top. And I make sure every part of it is covered. And it's important to make sure you have every part of it covered because that's your design that is going to go right on top. These stencils have very intricate designs, so if you're not covering every part of it, it's not going to come out the way you want it to. Then you're going to gently lift your stencil up to reveal your image. Okay, I can't be the only one that finds this image really aesthetically pleasing. Once your paint is dry, it's time to top coat it, which I did using clear coat satin. There are a couple different clear coats that you can use. There's flat, gloss, and satin. I've only used satin because for me, I like a nice satin finish, and why fix what's not broken? I can tell you that it is known to be one of the easier ones to use because it's almost like a paste. It's not as runny as like flat or gloss would be. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend you try this one. I'm using a natural bristle brush. I've used a couple different things before. I've done a natural brush, I've done synthetic, and I've used a foam brush. Not a huge fan of using the synthetic brush with it, but I have liked using a foam brush before, and this time I just chose to use a natural bristle brush, but either one will work for you. And here is the final product. I absolutely love how the stencil turned out in this. I think it is a really good pairing with that voodoo gel stain, and I think this would go great in any house that has like a rustic vibe to it.